South Africans are demonstrating that the changes and transformation that we are embarking upon here, they are not favorably disposed to it, and that's why they are running away. So as South Africans, we are resilient. We don't run away from our problems, and we shouldn't run away from our problems. And if you look at all national groups in our country, black and white, we've stayed in this country because it's our country and we must not run away from our problems. We must stay here and solve our problems. So when you run away, you're a coward. And that's a real cowardly act. And I expect every South African to stay here and we work together and we solve our problems. We've got the most beautiful country in the world, and I can bet you they will be back soon because there's no country like South Africa.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
White South Africans arriving as refugees at Dulles Airport outside Washington today on a plane chartered by the State Department, a process that usually takes years, greeted by a top-ranking U.S. diplomat.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America.
And this from President Trump.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
The president signed an executive order in February calling them victims of unjust racial discrimination from the country's black majority, something the South African government vigorously denies. While today the administration also canceled temporary refugee status for as many as 14,000 Afghans already in the U.S., including many who served alongside the U.S. in the war. All face persecution from the Taliban if they are forced to go back. Veterans groups reacting.
How do American veterans of the war in Afghanistan feel about the way their Afghan interpreters and allies are being treated?
We're pissed off. This is absolutely insane that we would treat people this way.
The welcome for white South Africans also in sharp contrast to another executive order the president signed the day he took office, suspending new refugee admissions for everyone else, including black Sudanese escaping genocide and Latin Americans fleeing violent gangs.
Some tonight question whether Elon Musk played a role in winning refugee status for his fellow white South Africans, because he has repeatedly posted on his platform X about their plight. Lester.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're peeling back the sanitized headlines and hollow political slogans to talk about what no one wants to admit, the harsh reality for minority white South Africans, particularly Afrikaners. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button, support this channel through super thanks, and make sure you let those ads roll for at least 30 seconds. It helps more than you know. And if you're really with us, consider joining the channel as a member. Every bit counts. The world's media will twist itself into knots to avoid using one particular word when it comes to white South African farmers: persecution. Heaven forbid you even whisper genocide, or you're instantly labeled a conspiracy theorist. But when 49 white South African refugees arrive in the United States welcomed with open arms and small American flags, suddenly it's a global diplomatic incident. President Ramaphosa calls them cowards. The ANC goes into full denial mode. Meanwhile, 8,000 more South Africans, overwhelmingly Afrikaners, are in the pipeline for the same refugee status. But sure, everything's just fine. These 49% are not wealthy, elite, fleeing tax brackets. They're working-class families, farmers, and skilled tradespeople, driven from their homes by escalating racial hostilities, rising crime, and a government whose policies walk a very fine line between corrective action and revenge fantasy. But let's rewind for a second. South Africa's agricultural sector, with a GDP contribution of nearly $14 billion in 2024, is overwhelmingly maintained by white farmers, a group that makes up just over 7% of the population. That's not just a statistic, it's the backbone of food security, rural employment, and economic stability. Afrikaners, the descendants of Dutch and French settlers, have been part of South Africa since the 1600s. Now, the same people who built much of the country's farming infrastructure are watching their land rights vanish under the Expropriation Act, legislation that gives the state power to confiscate land without compensation if it deems the land unused. President Ramaphosa insists that no land has yet been seized under this act. Maybe not officially, but tell that to the families already pushed out by illegal occupation, red tape, and selective enforcement. According to Action for Southern Africa, 72% of agricultural land is owned by whites. On paper, that might look like racial imbalance, but in reality, it reflects the historical and logistical expertise needed to run large-scale commercial farms, not to mention decades of investment and infrastructure. The ANC's so-called land reform is not about progress, it's about punishment. And let's not pretend it's all peaceful and bureaucratic. From April 2020 to March 2024, 225 people were killed on South African farms. Over 50 of them were farmers. Overwhelmingly white. These aren't accidental deaths. We're talking about brutal attacks, torture, executions. But if you bring this up, the official narrative shifts into high gear. There is no genocide, says Wandilisi Lobo of the Agricultural Business Chamber. According to him, everything's going swimmingly. No problems here. Ignore the blood on the plow. Even AfroForum, dismissed by critics as just another white interest group, has been begging the government to classify farm murders as priority crimes. They're asking for the same level of urgency given to rhino poaching. Think about that. You can shoot a farmer in front of his family and get less national outrage than if you harm a wild animal. Theo Boshoff of Agbiz insists there's no racial targeting, just remote vulnerability. Really? So it's just a coincidence that the violent crimes disproportionately affect white farmers, many of whom are elderly, and their families. How many coincidences does it take before it's called a pattern? Meanwhile, in a grotesque display of moral superiority, Ramaphosa calls the refugees cowards. Cowards for wanting safety. Cowards for refusing to be sacrificial lambs for the ANC's broken promises. Cowards for not sticking around to be statistics in a government-funded social experiment. Let's be real, this isn't about fear-mongering, this is about facts. When you combine a 30-year track record of affirmative action, exclusionary employment laws, targeted land policies, and rampant crime in rural areas, it's not irrational to pack up and leave, it's survival. But oh, how the global community loves its selective empathy. Refugee status was fast-tracked for the Afrikaners in just 3 months, which raised eyebrows not because it was unusual, but because they were white. Meanwhile, thousands of Congolese, Afghans and Syrians wait years, despite meeting every criterion under international refugee law. So it's not really about eligibility, it's about optics. If these 49 were any other ethnic group, they'd be on the front pages of every major outlet, hailed as survivors, not cowards. But they're Afrikaners, the political untouchables of post-apartheid South Africa. Every crime against them is dismissed as anecdotal, every fear ridiculed as overblown, every right they lose deemed overdue justice. Let's be clear, no one's denying the atrocities of apartheid. But two wrongs don't make a nation. A policy that punishes the grandchild for the sins of the grandfather is not reconciliation, it's revenge. And when that policy gets wrapped in the language of public interest, what it really means is, you have something we want. Let's not forget, Afrikaner trade unions like Solidarity represent over 600,000 families. They want to stay, they want to build. But they're being told, be grateful you're even here. Their skills, their history, their rights erased in the name of national healing, as if you can heal a wound by cutting deeper. The media keeps saying there's no genocide. Fine. Let's call it what it is. Systemic erosion, slow-motion dispossession, sanctioned hostility. When Musk, a son of South Africa, calls out the racism embedded in land reform policy, he's condemned by South African MPs for having benefited from apartheid, as if that disqualifies him from recognizing injustice. As if you need to be born poor to have a conscience. And when Trump calls it a genocide, he's accused of spreading conspiracy theories. But 8,000 applications for refugee status from white South Africans don't file themselves. Let's be brutally honest. South Africa is bleeding, and its farmers, black and white, are the ones feeding it. But if you punish the ones still keeping the fields alive, don't act surprised when they pack up and leave. So yes, President Ramaphosa, they are leaving. And yes, many of them are Afrikaners. And no, it's not because they're not favorably disposed to change, it's because they've already been changed. By fear, by loss, by silence. And by a government that calls them cowards for refusing to die quietly. Thanks for watching. If this content opened your eyes, even a little, show your support. Join the channel, donate via Super Thanks, and let the ads run to the 30-second mark to help keep this work going. Like, comment, and share, because these stories won't tell themselves. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and never apologize for seeking the truth.